What's up, guys? Welcome to the NFL First Look here on Roto Grinders, the first of 5 hours of NFL shows for you guys here this week. I am BritDevine. You can follow me along on Twitter at Brit_Divine. Joined by my normal co-hosts, Chris Beermakersfan Prince and Paul Boggslite Arrington. Guys, I didn't tell you this before the show, but next week you're going to be working with EMAC. I'm doing the Thursday show for him next week, so you're going to have some EMAC on you next Wednesday. But Beer, how was your Week 9, and are you ready for Week 10?
Week 9 was good. Yeah, it was a pretty good week, even though I had Colin Kaepernick in there. I think we all were pretty high on last week. I think he let a lot of us down, but the rest of my lineup carried the ship to victory, so can't complain. How about that Big Ben Roethlisberger guy?
I mean, we were making fun of his 6 touchdowns last week. It's not going to happen again, and he throws another 6 touchdowns, so is he going to throw another 6 touchdowns this week is the question. And this is the week, I think if I was going to pick one, it'd be this week, against the Jets. But we're going to get into that in a second.
He'll get 200 yards and go for us. That's how it's been this year.
Boggs, you ready for Week 10, man?
Absolutely. I had a pretty good week last week. Was able to, escape some of the, blow-ups in my face, but, Michael Floyd still didn't really come through. Fortunately, Jeremy Hill did, and, we rarely say, must-start in cash games, but I think that he qualified as that, as he had a monster game, which was certainly good to see, helped my bankroll, but, yeah, definitely looking forward to another solid week, hopefully. And I think I can go ahead and jinx Ben Roethlisberger. I'll say he will throw 6 touchdowns this week.
He's tossing 7, my friend.
Yeah, tell me about it.
So, guys, we're sponsored by DraftKings here, making millionaires every week here. They got the Millionaire Maker again this week. It is not a $27 buy-in. It is a $40 buy-in this week. So make sure to check that out. It overlaid pretty good the past couple weeks. They upped the buy-in in hopes probably to reduce some of that overlay. Guess we're going to have to see how that works out this week. I know I'm going to be firing pretty much the same amount of entries I have in the past couple of weeks, because let's be real, who doesn't want $1 million? Who doesn't want to win $1 million playing fantasy sports? I know I do. Boggs, we were just talking, you said must play for Jeremy Hill. If you guys are playing the Thursday games out there this week, Beer, is he a must-start for you on Thursday night against this Browns' horrible run defense?
I think you got to go back to the well, and the matchup is good. The price is still not bad, and not a ton of options that I love more than Hill this week when looking through everything. So generally I sit out these Thursday games, but if I was playing, he'd be one of my main targets for sure.
Yeah, you got to use Hill there. Another thing I've noticed for the wide receivers going up against the Browns, the wide receiver opposite of Joe Hayden has had some pretty good weeks the past few weeks. I'm going to expect A.J. Green to be kind of covered by Hayden. Mohamed Sanu, he had a good week last week. Is he in line again? I think he can keep up, maybe not his early season production or is just outrageous, but I think he's a pretty decent wide receiver the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, with Green back, I think a lot of people said it's going to hurt his value. I think it's going to help his value. He's really solidified himself as a top 25, 30 receiver in this league, and even with A.J. Green there, I think there's plenty of targets to go around. So I don't think he's going to go away. A lot of people said that's it for Sanu. He showed last week, still has value. I think that's going to continue the rest of the year.
Boggs, let's go to the Cleveland side here. I don't really see anything I want on this Cleveland side. The running game, you've got West, you've got Tate. It's kind of a mess there. Andrew Hawkins going into this game, guys. If you're looking to play him, make sure you check Thursday. He is questionable at best right now to play. I just don't see a lot on this Cleveland side I want to play this week.
Yeah, outside of GPPs, there isn't a whole lot to get excited about. That being said, I think Ben Tate, he's had 3 very subpar weeks in a row. If there's ever a week to turn it around, probably was the last 3 weeks. But that being said, Cincinnati is just as bad in terms of run defense as Tampa Bay, Oakland, and Jacksonville, respectively. So, a big bruising back, that's the kind of running backs that, tend to light up Cincinnati. But, I simply can't trust the guy despite his, price, drop, because it looks like they're starting to give Terrence West a larger role, and then you've also got Isaiah Crowell waiting in the wings. So outside of a GPP, kind of speculative play, that's about all I like on the Browns side of the ball.
Yeah, I don't really see much. Terrence West, there was a tweet right before kickoff last week that someone, Terrence West is going to get the majority of the carries, and he certainly did get that last week. And Ben Tate had 3 yards rushing on 10 attempts last week, guys. Terrence West is probably going to see the majority of the carries this week, but with their center out, they're kind of hurting. Cincinnati run defense has been able to been taken advantage of. GPP only if you're playing these Thursday games. Maybe take a look at West, but I would probably fade that entire Cleveland running game and look elsewhere. Jeremy Hill, Boggs, you got to agree, almost a must-play if you're playing Thursday cash games.
Absolutely, and I agree with your guys' take on Sanu as well. I think a lot of his success last week was kind of how they wanted to get AJ Green back and involved, but he wasn't necessarily the focal point. He was a decoy in some spots, and Sanu doesn't really get any credit for whatever reason. I think I remember he went to Rutgers, didn't he? A few years back. He was a good player, and you see it as he's starting to get a bigger role in that offense. I definitely think that Buster Skrine, who is the cornerback for the Browns that had been outperforming Joe Hayden earlier in the season, has struggled late, and Sanu and his big body is certainly going to be heavily involved in this game, especially God forbid they get behind. So I do like Sanu a bit as well. His price has come up pretty much around the industry, and it was pretty expensive last week. I mean, he's still more expensive than AJ Green, so it's still a GPP only play. And if I had my pick, I would still go with Green as he's getting healthier. But he does have upside.
Let's go to the next game here, Beer. Chiefs at Bills. Lots of injury news for the Bills this week. Watkins, it looks like Sammy Watkins was injured in practice this week. Keep an eye on that. The coach says it's pretty minor. But you're going to want to keep an eye on that leading up to the Sunday games. Definitely don't play him on your Thursday lock games on FanDuel if for some reason they say Watkins, if he doesn't practice tomorrow. Fred Jackson's back at practice this week, kind of muddying up the halfback situation, which I wouldn't want anything to do with anyway against the Chiefs. They're very stingy against the run. I'm having trouble finding anyone I want to play from this game here.
Say, is it just me? But I'm not seeing it here from Buffalo. I just don't like the matchup for them. I know they're playing a lot better. Orton's been good. Watkins has been good. I don't like this matchup for them against the Chiefs. Chiefs have been pretty solid against pretty much every position. If Watkins is healthy, he's always worth a roll of the dice with his big playability. But other than that, even cheap prices on Chandler, some of the running backs don't have me very appealed. Anthony Dixon at 4,100. I think there's better options even at that price. Chandler, 33, so I would be a wide receiver if I played anybody. Watkins at 62 is not bad. If he were not to play, I think Robert Woods could be a great value at 4,300, but nothing here in Buffalo that sticks out to me, boys. Again, I don't know if it's just me, but I don't like this matchup for them at all.
Yeah, I'm not either. Boggs, let's go to the Chiefs side here. Alex Smith, is he in play for you maybe in a GPP? The Bills are kind of tough to beat on the run. They can be beat in the air. Jamal Charles, even though the Bills do have that tough run D, he's always in play. They definitely get him involved in the passing game, and he's pretty much matchup proof. Travis Kelce, are we on him? Are we not on him? He doesn't get a lot of snaps, but he does lead the Chiefs in targets. When he's in there, they definitely make plays for him. Are you on him, on Bo? What do you make of this Chiefs offense?
Well, I think you guys all know by now that it's pretty much Jamal Charles and Travis Kelce that run that show. Haven't used Alex Smith pretty much ever in daily fantasy sports, and that's going to continue again even into this week against a weak Buffalo secondary. They just simply don't throw enough passes and use Alex Smith in a role that is gonna have a high upside. So his ceiling is low, but also his floor is relatively low as well. So it's just not a high upside play. I think there are several other key players that I'd go for in GPPs who we'll get to later. Really, the only options I'm liking in this game are Charles. Obviously, had a pretty good week last week, and that was against a tough Jets D. Buffalo has been stingy against the run this year, especially at home, But again, Charles, just the amount of volume he gets, it has got to be at least considered, especially since he's still moderately priced. It's very manageable to get him in your lineups. Kelsey, I tend to prefer him on a site that doesn't value PPR for a full point. Values touchdowns a little bit more, but his price is still pretty cheap. And again, this guy, it's kind of Jekyll and Hyde with Andy Reid and his usage of him. But when he's on the field, he targeted, because the interesting stat that I can't even believe. We're 9 weeks into the season. This is week 10, and there isn't a single wide receiver on Kansas City that has scored a touchdown this year, which is pretty incredible. Nuts. But, I think that if you're looking for a GPP option from this team, I think it might be Kansas City defense, because, Orton's going to be tossing the ball around a lot, you would at least expect. And, on the road, a lot of people prefer, myself included, to take defenses at home. But Buffalo, without a running game and without their top wide receiving option, this game could get out of hand, and the Chiefs could certainly benefit from that. So don't sleep on the Chiefs D. Although I do not have them ranked in my top defenses. I just think they're an interesting GPP option that many people probably won't be on.
Yeah, I'm with you with both defenses in this game. It has the lowest over-under the week at 41. By far, the next lowest I'm seeing is 43.5. The next game we're going to get to here, Miami and Detroit. So I think both defenses are definitely in play. Bills at home are always a tough defense, so take a look at them. Here, let's go to the next game. Dolphins at Lions. We've got Calvin Johnson. It's looking like he's going to be back at or very close to 100%. I'm expecting him to be playing with no limitations at all. That has to bring him back into the conversation as one of the top wide receivers of the week. Him, Golden Tate, Matt Stafford. To me, I think Stafford and Tate are more GPP plays, but in your cash games, I have no problem rolling out Calvin Johnson, even against a somewhat stingy Dolphins defense.
Yeah, Dolphins have been good, but it's Calvin Johnson, and from everything I'm reading, seeing, and I live here in the area, so I get a lot of the local reports and reporters, and it sounds like he's good to go, ready to go. Says this is the best he's felt at midseason, basically in his career. So that time off, I think, did exactly what they wanted it to do. He's ready to roll. 7,100 on DraftKings. Come on, that's a steal for Calvin Johnson. So I have no issues rolling him out. I don't think he'll be limited at all. He will be in a lot of my lineups. Golden Tate at 7,000. I think he'll be a nice GPP play because people are going to compare the two. They're going to look at Calvin Johnson at 71, Tate at 7,000. Most of us would click Calvin Johnson. I don't blame you. I would as well. So Tate, I think, could go a bit on their own. He produced even when Calvin was in the lineup, and the second receiver role in Detroit has always had value. So don't sleep on Tate either. The running back situation's a mess for me. Joik, Reggie, Riddick. There's so many people there. Reggie's supposed to be back healthy. I'm just not sure how that's going to play out. Don't give me the narratives of Reggie Bush. We've already been down that road with New Orleans, Miami, and blah, blah, blah. It's Reggie Bush. I think this is it. He's done. Riddick's a better player in that role. Stafford, to me, no more than a game manager at this point. I really haven't rostered him much at all this season. Last year, they were a team that aired out the ball. This year, they want to play defense. They want to slow the game down. So while the receivers have value to me, I don't think Stafford can put a big number up at the price that he's at this point. So a lot of Calvin, some Tate. Don't even mind the defense with the way they've been playing. Even against a red-hot Tannehill, I think they can cause some turnovers in this one.
Yeah, Lions defense off a bye. Have no issue rolling them out against the Dolphins in Detroit. Boggs, let's go to the Dolphins side of the ball. If me and Beer are both on the Lions defense, what's your take on this Dolphins offense? Ryan Tannehill, you got Mike Wallace. You're getting some of the other receivers involved. You got Lamar Miller there. I got to be honest, I'm just not interested in any of these Dolphins this week. Going into Detroit on a bye just screams this Lions D is going to be healthy and really kind of put the screws to the Dolphins.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing I like for cash game purposes. There's nothing I like even really for tournaments because, since Calvin Johnson went down, we could say both defenses are in play, but, I think that Detroit still has the potential to blow up Miami kind of riding high after shutting out my Chargers last week. It's this game's just screams complete
It's
fade.
a defensive. This is the second lowest over under the week at 43.5.
But then again, we've seen it. Calvin Johnson, he could have a day, and Stafford, if he can, find Calvin Johnson, there's an opportunity for some points to be scored in this game. I'm not really going to speculate on garbage time, and it's a tough matchup either way, which is why I'm just not really loving anyone on the Dolphin side of the ball. I think we all were in agreement that Tannehill was a kind of sneaky under the radar play last week, and he looked good. But the Chargers defense, especially on the road after traveling cross country, is not going to be the same going against this Detroit defense, who's well rested and has been playing fantastic all season long. So it's a game that I'm just going to fade completely from Miami.
Any interest in the Dolphins D at all going up against the Lions?
Again, I said I don't even like them in this matchup. I just think that it's too risky of a play at their price. There's a number of other options I'd rather go in cash games and GPPs. So it's a pretty much across the board fade on the Dolphins' part on my view.
Beer, let's go to the next game. It's the Cowboys at the Jags, but it's in London. So you get stuck talking about the Jags. Last week, I said, do you want to play the Robinsons? That's about all you wanted to play. I'd be interested in for the Jags. And I think that's pretty much it again this week. Allen Robinson, Denard Robinson. I'm not buying into Allen Hurns. Kind of big week he's shown. He has these huge weeks. Maybe an outside chance of a GPP play for me. But what's your take on Denard Robinson and maybe a cash game this week?
I'm on the fence on him in a cash game. I like the price on him, 5,100. I like the way he's been playing. He's been getting a lot of touches. Dallas has been pretty decent against the run. I think they're 10th or 11th off the top of my head against running backs. But Denard would be my favorite play if I'm targeting Jaguars. The receivers you mentioned, Allen Robinson, even that. His role has seemed to shrink a little bit. He was a targets and a PPR machine the last few weeks, but within the last 2 weeks really hasn't done as much. So with Hurns taking on more of a role, Shorts is there. Harburg has his big week. So this passing game to me, I'm not even in a GPP. I'm not looking at it. I know the matchup's good against Dallas, but Bortles is a turnover machine, and I can't predict what receiver it's going to be. I think there's other guys on other teams. I know who's going to get targets. I know who's going to get the ball. Here I can't predict that. So I do like Robinson. Borderline cash game play at his price, but probably more of a tournament play for me. But gotta love how many touches he's getting and what he's doing with those touches so far.
Yeah, this week is kind of a weird week in football. There's not a lot of very juicy fantasy matchups. I think you're going to see a lot of people using the same guys this week with the pricing. It's so easy to get some of the top names and great matchups. You don't really have to stretch in a GPP, but in a GPP, if you want to win one of these millionaire makers, sometimes you got to think a little bit out of the box. So don't count out either of the Robinsons for me. Boggs, let's go to the Cowboys side of this. You got Romo or Whedon. If Romo plays, I'm expecting him to be somewhat limited. I'm not expecting him to throw these huge bombs to Des Bryant or throw across the field, really tweaking his back. It doesn't seem like a very smart move by him. I'm kind of limiting the Cowboys' passing game, and that has me eyeing heavily DeMarco Murray.
Yeah, I think that that's certainly the route the approach you've got to take this week. I haven't been playing DeMarco Murray as much as I should have early on in the year. I kind of missed out, and even in recent weeks, you can see that. It's kind of hard for me to see whether they're intentionally limiting his carries, but you're not seeing the volume, and no surprise, they've lost the last 2 weeks. So I expect him to get the ball some more. I just hope that that if you take Murray, that they don't get out to a big early lead in this game, because if that's the case, then you're going to see him be limited throughout the rest of the game. I don't think they're going to give him the ball 25 plus times in cold and rainy weather out there in England with so much travel. So it's frightening for me. it's also a tough situation because he's a solid cash game option, but I think his upside is limited somewhat this week. And then, on the flip side, in a GPP, he's a guy that's well known and it's going to be highly owned. So I don't really think you gain an advantage in either area. So I don't have him in my top 3 running backs this week, but I think he's certainly in play, especially since his price is not probably not as high as it should be. If Whedon gets to start, I think he's GPP play. I know he was terrible the last couple weeks, but this is the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think that they're going to try. Jerry Jones will do everything they can to get Tony Romo out there for all the people in England. He's marketing.
Jerry Jones is stupid. They need to just rest Romo one more week. I think they can beat the Jags, and then I think don't they go on a bye next week? Or something like that. They have
I'm not 100% sure, but if that's the case, then they definitely need to, rest Romo. But that being said, it's like I said, it's Jerry Jones out there. He already said, I believe he came out and said that Romo's going to start the game, so that remains to be seen. But yeah, I'm not even liking the Cowboys D because unless all of those other pieces that I was kind of questionable about come together. They're not the same defense. My Carson Palmer pick fell a little bit short last week, but he still had a good game, and you could tell that he was able to kind of pick through this week Cowboys D. So it's not a whole lot of love. This is another one of these games. I completely agree with you. I think there are a couple under-the-radar games, but for this one, I'm just not loving it. Hopefully maybe you guys can shed some light on it for me.
Can you use Dez Bryant, $6,400? He's the 1, 2, 3, maybe the 10th or 11th highest priced wide receiver this week. Can you use him in cash games? I mean, I'd much rather pay $200 more for Julio Jones in a huge plus matchup, or pay up a couple hundred more to get Calvin Johnson. What's your take on Dez Bryant in cash games?
Yeah, and I agree with that. I don't think he's a cash game play. He's that a lot of people were on his case, but he didn't necessarily have a bad week last week. A lot of those balls were underthrown, thrown behind him. Brandon Whedon just really didn't have it last week. So it really kind of depends who's starting, but he's kind of another guy, kind of like Kelsey, who's more touchdown dependent and really hasn't had many monster performances. Although we know he's certainly capable of it. But just the way that offensive game plan is designed, it's the Cowboys don't want to be slinging the ball around. So I think that he's priced appropriately, as crazy as that sounds. And on DraftKings, I think he's really only a GPP play. I agree with you. I'd much rather have some other options who we'll get to here in your cash games who I believe have a higher ceiling and are in around that same range in terms of consistency.
Yeah, even if Romo's in, I don't think I can fire a bullet with Dez in my cash games this week. Next game here, Beer, Niners at Saints. Can we trust Drew Brees against the Niners defense? The Niners defense been pretty stingy against allowing quarterbacks fantasy points this year. Can you use them in cash games, GPPs? What's your take on Mark Ingram? It looks like Kareem Robinson's going to be back this week. Do you temper back your expectations for Mark Ingram? He led the league last week in red zone touches. I think he had 10. The next guy had 6. So he's really getting the rock when they got inside the 20. It makes some sense out of the receivers and Jimmy Graham. Are you going to be using these Saints in cash games and or your GPPs?
Saints are always an interesting puzzle, especially when they're at home, so everybody looks to them, but it's a tough matchup against San Francisco. So let's get Jimmy Graham out of the way. I have no issues with Graham. I still think he's the top tight end every week. I don't care who he's going against, especially with no Gronk on the board. Julius Thomas's price is nice on DraftKings, but we know what Graham's been doing lately, so locked and loaded, no issues with Graham, cash or tournament. Breeze, I also have no issues with. I think at home, I know we've talked, he's got a big floor at home. Kind of haven't seen that this year, but even in a tougher matchup, I still think the Saints are fighting for their playoff lives. This is going to be a tough game for the San Francisco D, so I don't mind Breeze. There's guys I'd rather have, so in the cash game setting, I'm more likely to pay up for Rodgers, a Manning, Roethlisberger, guys like that. But in a tournament, Breeze just brings that huge upside to the table. Even in a matchup like this where most will avoid him, I'm still going to go to the well a couple times if I'm making multiple lineups. The receivers is where it gets tough. We know this. Colston, Cooks, Stills is starting to come on. So a lot of options there. So I don't necessarily think you have to tie him to anybody. And I'll sprinkle in a little bit of those receivers on different tournament lineups. But tying one to him, you're playing roulette because you're trying to guess which one it's going to be. Cooks brings the most upside. Stills brings the big plays to the table. Colston's starting to fade away. So you take for what it's worth, but Breeze and Graham will be my targets here. Shane Graham, always a good cheap kicking option. About all I got here in the Saints. Running game-wise, I know we didn't cover that. Again, it's roulette. I would love to see Ingram continue to get the ball. He looks phenomenal. Looks like the guy we saw at Alabama. I don't understand why they would go away from that. They've been doing it for years. You know, whether it was Deuce McAllister or when Pierre Thomas first showed up. Whoever the best guy, Chris Ivory was getting carries, looked great there. Then they want to get this guy involved, that guy involved. Cadet, a free agent off the street, let's give him some carries. So if I know Ingram's going to get the carries, even in a tough matchup against San Francisco, I got no issues rolling with him. But if Kyrie's back, it's going to eat into his value. They like to use multiple running backs. They've shown over 10, 12 years that's their game. They don't have a go-to guy, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Ingram carries the mail again, but I'm going to have to wait and see. If I know Robinson's back, makes Ingram almost a fade for me.
Yeah, I'm pulling up the Niners. They're the 5th stingiest team in terms of giving up fantasy points to running backs, guys. And with the addition of Kareem Robinson, I just can't pull the trigger on Mark Ingram this week. And cash games, maybe in a GPP, I still think there's better choices, especially on DraftKings. You can spend up a little bit. Get Jamal Charles, Marshawn Lynch, or you can spend down and get some other names. He's kind of in the no man's land where you get some really, really good names just a little bit higher, and you get some people in better spots just a little bit lower. So I don't think I'm going to be using him too much on DraftKings this week, even though he's had 2 huge games in a row. Boggs, let's go. You're going to hear a theme this week between all the Grinders Live hosts, and it's going to be called I Will Not Use Colin Kaepernick in Cash Games. And I'm serious. He's going to rope me in again this week. In a game that could turn into a shootout in New Orleans. I'm not going to do it. Are you going to do it, and should our listeners do it?
Well, I've never done it, and I never will. I don't think Colin Kaepernick is an elite quarterback. I think he's an elite athlete, but you see it from time to time. Last week is a perfect example. He's not consistent. And it's just too risky for me week in, week out. I don't care how below his price goes. I can't trust the guy, and I can't trust his head coach because Harbaugh is, I guess you could say a more fit, a more in shape kind of version of Bill Belichick, where he just kind of likes to be a little different, and he doesn't like you knowing. He doesn't like to go by what he should do. He likes to do it his way. And you see it, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but that makes everyone on the Niners pretty much a GPP play for me.
Let me pose a question to you. Because of how bad he was last week, and his price this week on DraftKings, he's $7,300. So you guys aren't looking at the screen. Ben Roethlisberger's $200 more. You can get Russell Wilson for $300 less. You can go get Mark Sanchez way cheaper. He's going to be extremely low owned in the Millionaire Maker because of recency bias and where he sits in price. Does that make you want to use him if you have 20 lineups? Would you put him in one, or is he pretty much going to be completely off your radar?
Well, I mean, the bottom line is I'm going to have some exposure to him because he does possess that high upside. So if I had 20 lineups, it depends. I mean, how many, I'm not using 20 quarterbacks, but I would probably in a GPP just because of what he's capable of doing and, in a game that should be, very high scoring, has the ability to be high scoring. I think he's, somewhere in the 7 to 10 range in terms of my rankings of quarterbacks this week. I don't actually have a number. He's not written down in my top 5, but again, this is a guy I'm going to have exposure to. And, the tricky part, another kind of problem that I think people have is that you don't know which targets or which receivers are going to get the ball. So, but the upside's there, the matchup's there. the recency bias, like you mentioned, a lot of people pissed off at him, not going to use him. Everything's, screaming to me, play him. But again, it's GPPs only. Don't sniff this guy in your cash games ever. I don't care if he's playing the Jacksonville Jaguars.
I'm not going to do it. Beer, you going to do it? I'm not doing it anymore. Are you with me?
I have a hard time giving up on him completely. So I just, I can't say. Look at these guys I'm addicted to. I can't say no.
Justin Hunter, Michael Floyd, Colin Kaepernick. You put them all on your lineup this week, it might actually work out for you because no one's going to have those two guys.
Millionaire lineup right there. You just gave it. And I wouldn't have
one guy I do like, especially on DraftKings this week, is Frank Gore. I love his price. I know he's been pretty poor the last 2 weeks, but the Saints, they're just bad on defense all around. And I just don't really see anyone else. Early in the year it was Carlos Hyde. But again, this is a guy that hasn't had double-digit carries in 2 weeks. I think they're resting Gore. I think they're going to need him in this game, especially if they want to somehow keep Breeze off the field. I don't think they're going to be able to do that. But I think Gore at his price is definitely in consideration, especially in your cash games, because, hey, we saw a guy right around that same price range last week, and Alfred Morris, obviously a different matchup, but a similar type of guy that doesn't necessarily catch many balls. But I would say that Frank Gore, is a guy that can catch balls and, sometimes targeted. So I love him, especially since he is that guy. He's the, bell cow back. And at that price, it's going to be tempting to pass up on Frank Gore in what could be a high-scoring game. And quickly, on the Saints, I think Breeze is definitely in play. I've got him in my top 5 quarterbacks this week. You look at the Niners, it says they've been stingy against the quarterbacks. They've had the luxury of playing the Rams twice, and Kansas City and Philadelphia in a very strange game where, Nick Foles and that offense couldn't get in a rhythm because the defense scored 2 touchdowns. So you look at the teams they've actually been torched by, Denver, to a lesser extent, Arizona and Dallas. I think that there's a lot of potential for Drew Brees, especially since they're rolling. And I love Jimmy Graham this week, especially, this is key, if Patrick Willis is out again. Latest report I read, he is not practicing, which is definitely going to significantly bump Jimmy Graham for me. We saw it last week. Gronk's still under 20% owned. It's ridiculous. Getting a guy of his caliber at a position that offers very little upside. I'm loving Jimmy Graham this week, especially if Patrick Willis is out.
Next game, guys, we've got the Titans at the Ravens. Beer, let's talk about Joe Flacco, Justin Forsett, the Smiths, and Owen Daniels. Can you use any of these guys in a cash game? I'm eyeing Justin Forsett slightly maybe in a cash game. He's pretty down there in price. The Titans have given up the 5th most fantasy points to running backs this year. Just that Forsett, he just doesn't get those touchdowns. They get inside that 10, 15-yard line, and it goes to Taliaferro now. What's your take on the Ravens for cash games, and are any of these guys GPP plays? I think you can use Flacco, one of the Smiths, in a GPP.
Actually, I like the Ravens a lot this week. I think this is a good matchup for them at home. Could be a lot of sneaky value here. I think a lot of people write this game off, kind of look at it as 2 subpar offenses, I guess, to be nice. But to me, I think they're all in play. Forsett, I don't mind that play at all. I actually had him in a column today. 5,000, and yes, his touches will be limited by Taliaferro, but at 14 touches, still put up 15.5 DraftKings points. So
if he ever gets in the end zone, he's going to be huge value. It's just that they get to the 10, 15-yard line. Somehow he never gets into the end zone.
Yeah, but he's got a lot of value on these PPR sites because he's going to catch a lot of passes. So he's shown, he's gotten up to 7 catches in a game. So he's involved. He's still a lead back in that offense at a discounted price. Torrey Smith's been playing great outside of 1 dud. Has been pretty consistent as of late. So they said they were going to get him more involved. That's certainly what they did. It's kind of been at the expense of Steve Smith, though. We really haven't seen him do much the last couple weeks. 3 catches, 5 catches. So he could be a sneaky option to bounce back this week. I think people may have soured on him. Torrey Smith brings a big playability. We talked Forsett. I like Flacco's upside this week, so he'd be a tournament play for me. I think there's huge upside there at a very low ownership. I could see him being a handful of percent owned, and we've seen his ceiling. If anyone doesn't remember, go back a few weeks and watch him against Tampa Bay.
He had a couple 6-touchdown games before. Was it last year or the year before, too?
So they're coming off a rough game last week, so they're going to look to get back on track. Owen Daniels, one of my top tight ends of the week. I think he's great value. This is a Kubiak offense. Daniels did well in Houston with Kubiak. They used the tight end a ton, especially in the red zone. Love Owen Daniels this week. So the Ravens, to me, a sneaky value team. I think there's value plays at every position there. All will be underowned, in my opinion.
What about the defense? They're very heavy favorites, -9-point favorites with a over/under. Let me find it here. I just looked at it. 44. So they're very heavily favored in a low-scoring game.
Yeah, I like them a lot. They've been my top 5 defenses this week. So I was excited about all the other plays. Forgot the D, but they are definitely in play this week.
Boggs, let's go to the Titans here. We just saw Ben Roethlisberger throw 6 touchdowns. There's no Jimmy Smith again this week probably for the Ravens. Does that have you on Justin Hunter, Zach Mettenberg, Wright, Delaney Walker, any of these guys in play for you? I think you can make a case for them in a GPP just based on what we saw Big Ben do. But I think you have to temper your expectations because Zach Mettenberg is not Ben Roethlisberger right now.
Yeah, it's all going to come down to how Baltimore really comes out in this game, in my opinion. I tend to agree with Beermakersfan that I think they're going to come out trying to make a statement after getting their asses kicked in Pittsburgh last Sunday night. So if that's the case, then Mettenberger, if not anything for garbage time, I think is a decent play this week. He was pretty effective in his first start, believe it or not. I didn't think he looked personally. I didn't think he looked that great, but you look back at the numbers. He's a yard short, 300 yards, and he threw the ball 41 times. I don't think that this run game is going to be able to break through Baltimore's defense. So, yeah. If I the way that Mettenberger, the style of quarterback he is, he's like a vertical big arm guy. That sets up for Justin Hunter nicely, but again, how many times has this guy burned us over the years? If you're playing, or over the years, over the weeks.
Beermakersfan hates Justin Hunter right now. You have to hate him.
Justin Hunter.
I still love him.
Yeah, he still loves him. I don't, but that's neither here nor there. If you play the matchups, it looks like Kendall Wright's got the best matchup against Matt Elam, I believe his name is, who, according to Pro Football Focus, is the worst cornerback in football. Now, I don't think the guy's played very much. I think he's kind of filled in since Jimmy Smith went down. But again, remember, he doesn't grade out as a very good cornerback. Kendall Wright is the guy that's really posted monster games, him and Delaney Walker. And with Baltimore being pretty effective against the tight ends, I think that Kendall Wright is probably the guy I would have over Justin Hunter. But again, these are all GPP-only plays, and just not going anywhere near Bishop Sankey this week.
Yeah, the run game in Tennessee, just completely ignore it. Don't even look that way, guys. Steelers at Jets is our next game here, Beer. Michael Vick, GPP play? Are you on board with me with maybe a Percy Harvin? And Eric Decker, Jason Morrow, he doesn't seem to be on Vic's radar at all. In this halfback situation, it looks like Chris Johnson getting involved a little more. Not sure I want to venture into that way. But are you on board with me, Michael Vick to Percy Harvin in a GPP?
I'll take the caboose in that scenario. I like Harvin a lot this week, but I can't go with Vic. I just don't trust him. He's a turnover machine. He's an injury waiting to happen. Not liking it. The matchup is not bad. Against Pittsburgh, it looks good on paper. So Harvin is one of my favorite wide receiver plays of the week. A lot of these sites, his price is still down. But the Jets, and thank God they finally got something right, hopefully. Not jinxing it here, but they look like they're going to use him like the Vikings used him, and that's Percy Harvin. If you go back to the University of Florida, that's how you use him. He's an all-around weapon, running back, receiver, catch balls out of the backfield, go deep, catch screens, end arounds. That's how you use him. And he got a lot of targets last week, 13 targets, turned into 11 catches. So I think his usage is going to continue to be high, and his prices don't reflect that. So he's a steal on both the major sites, in my opinion. So I'll be all over him this weekend. Just can't trust Vic. Running game, again, I wish it was just Ivory. Here's 20 carries. Let's see what he can do, because he's one of my favorite running backs to watch run the ball. yet they don't want to give him the ball. So Chris Johnson, to me, no, he needs to let's just go away, let Ivory have this job, but that's not going to happen, unfortunately. Decker's not a bad play either. So you think, I like Harvin, I like Decker, should like Vic. I just can't trust it. I don't trust Michael Vick. I will not be using him this weekend.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about Decker. Everyone's going to be on the sexy Percy Harvin this week because all these short little passes and the breaks he can do. But Eric Decker, he's the red zone target for sure there. And you want touchdowns in fantasy football. Kind of more touchdowns you score, usually the better your score is at the end of the day. And Eric Decker's a big red zone target. He got the touchdown last week. You think Eric Decker instead of Percy Harvin in these millionaire makers? I think you're going to see a lot more Percy Harvin than Decker. Think you could use Decker instead of Percy Harvin?
Yeah, I got no issues with it. I like Harvin better. I'll be using a lot of Harvin. I'll also be using Decker. And basically for the points you just brought up, the guy scores touchdowns, and more people are going to go towards Harvin. But Decker brings a big upside as well, so don't forget about him. I think he makes for a great play as well.
Boggs, let's go to the Steelers. Big Ben, let's just call it another 6-touchdown performance for Ben Roethlisberger. Antonio Brown's going to get 15 catches, 3 touchdowns. Martavis Bryant, he's going to get a couple touchdowns. Touchdowns for everyone, right? Is that how it's going to work this week?
Hopefully not. Hopefully it's just touchdowns for Antonio Brown because that's the only guy I can really trust. Wheaton has been very inconsistent all season long. He scored a touchdown last game and has been heavily involved. But with the emergence of Martavis Bryant, it's kind of making it difficult to really pinpoint outside of Antonio Brown, who's just money. It's too hard to go anywhere outside of those two guys. So I'm going to stick with it. My best lineup last week in the Million Maker, I threw in a Ben Roethlisberger lineup with Antonio Brown, and I even had Matt Asiata, which reminds me I believe I said
Matt Asiata in a lineup last week somewhere.
I believe I told you guys that he was going to get more work.
Oh, you did.
And it helped me, but I still missed out. But regardless, it's Antonio Brown. That guy's the number one receiver. He's going to get targets. He's targeted in the end zone, in the red zone. Just like I said, he's simply just money at this point. So I like the Roethlisberger to Antonio Brown combo.
Let's talk about Le'Veon Bell here because this is the guy I'm kind of a little concerned about. Everyone, guys, Ben Roethlisberger's price is very nice on DraftKings this week. He's also nice around the rest of the industry. No problem rolling him out. Le'Veon Bell. They don't really seem to give him 20 rushes. He's heavily involved in the passing game, though. You don't beat the Jets on the run usually. I think they're pretty susceptible against the run, though. They're just so bad against the pass. Everyone passes on them. This would be the game I could see a huge passing game for Big Ben. Is Le'Veon Bell someone you're targeting as a running back for Pittsburgh?
No, not this week. This is pretty much the first week where I think that Le'Veon Bell is just not going to be in play for me. I know his price is attractive, and a guy kind of similar in the mold like Jamal Charles did have a good week last week, but the Jets, they're reeling for a win. They need to really bear down on defense. So I already think with Todd Haley as the offensive coordinator, we'll see Pittsburgh have first down and a half yard to go, and they'll pass the ball 3 times.
Haley wants to be proven. I wrote up in an article. He wants to be proven that he's this offensive genius. He wants to pass the ball all over the place.
Yeah, the only thing he's really proven to me up to this point in his career is that he's a dick. That's about it. But
I was just gonna say that.
The only
let me play a quick name game with you guys real quick on running back. Le'Veon Bell or Andre Ellington?
Ellington.
Le'Veon Bell, Marshawn Lynch.
Lynch.
Bell or Charles?
Charles.
So the only one, Bell is he's higher priced than all those except Ellington. Ellington's only $300 more. In your cash games, guys, I don't think Le'Veon Bell is going to be very heavily targeted, and for good reason. Does that make him a GPP play to you in this millionaire maker at all, Box? He's going to be severely low owned. They do like to pass it to him. You there, Boggs?
Yeah. Sorry, you cut out for a sec, but I thought about it, and then I kind of went back and looked at a guy in the similar type of mold who can catch the ball out of the backfield, and that's Matt Forte. And I know it was a long time ago, but in Week 3, he had a pretty mediocre game against the Jets. Obviously, these are two different offenses, but I just don't see it from Le'Veon Bell this week. And you mentioned his price, definitely going to be under-owned, but I just don't see any way in which he's going to be like the top guy, and he's going to really burn you if you fade him.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to be fading him for the most part as well. Let's move on to the next game here. Falcons at Bucks here, Beer. The Bucks, Josh McCown overtook Matt Glennon. Not sure if I'm on board with that move. Glennon, he's been okay. I guess he's not winning the job, so I guess they're going back to McCown this week. He's going to be very cheap around the industry. Can you use McCown against this Falcons defense, who is pretty susceptible to giving up fantasy points? You got the halfback situation with Bobby Rainey. Sims is probably going to get his first carries of the year. Evans, VJax. I think there is some fantasy goodness on Tampa Bay, but where's it going to come from?
I love this game. I'm going to be heavily targeting this game a lot, and I don't know a lot of people are, but this is your sneaky fantasy goodness game right here. So do my best to break this down. Running back wise, I love Bobby Rainey this week. Atlanta is absolutely terrible against the running back position. If you go back to last year, this is the team Rainey had his big breakout again. 163 yards, 3 touchdowns in basically the same time of the year at home against Atlanta. Nothing's gotten better in that Atlanta D. So if I know for certain that Doug Martin is out, I don't think Sims is going to be getting enough work to eat into Rainey's work. If anything, I'd see a 80-20 split, and that's the best case scenario for Sims. The guy has 0 preseason carries, 0 NFL carries. They're not going to throw him in there for a full workload. Love Rainey this week. Great value on him. Mike Evans, fantastic play this week as well. Loved him last week, used him a lot. It paid off. I think he's slowly becoming their #1 receiver. People are saying they're phasing Djax out. You can call it that if you want, but he's still a weapon for them, so don't sleep on Jackson either. I just prefer Evans. I think he's a long-term stud in this league, a true #1 receiver. You saw it in college. You're starting to see it now. So the big playability, no issues with him. Cash games or tournaments. Love me some Evans. McCown, tournament only for me. I think he's out to prove this is his job. Both of these guys, let's be honest, they both sucked. Nobody's won this job. Nobody's lost this job. They've both been terrible. So I can use McCown in a tournament just because Atlanta's defense is so bad and McCown's price is so cheap. I can stack up other positions with some studs. So I got no issues rolling him out in the tournament. Wouldn't trust him in a cash game. I'd rather, if you're going cheap, much rather have Sanchez and probably in that same price range. But love Rainey a lot this week. Love Evans a lot this week. And I'll mix in some McCown in tournaments along with some Vincent Jackson.
Yeah, I was just going to mention Sanchez. Sanchez is 5,400 this week on DraftKings, guys. McCown's 5,000, which is the minimum. I think in your cash games, Beer, if you want to go real cheap at quarterback, I think you'd take Mark Sanchez over McCown, right?
Oh, yeah, all day. Like I said, I like McCown in a tournament setting because I think he wants to take this job and prove he's the man. A lot of talk on him. He's been bad. These guys are prideful, so I think he's going to want to come out, have a big game. This is definitely defense that he can do that against. But, again, we've seen the bad of Josh McCown, so wouldn't trust him in a cash game. But tournaments, I do think there's some upside there.
Boggs, let's go to the other side of this, where we had the Falcons, who just absolutely destroyed the Bucs earlier this season in Atlanta. They're in Tampa Bay. It's going to be warm, so it's not the worst conditions. You have to love Julio Jones, Roddy White, and Matt Ryan in this matchup. The Bucs just give up passing yards, touchdowns like nobody's business. They have given up the most fantasy points to wide receivers this season. Are you with me?
Oh, yeah, and I'm going to crack a beer to that because this, I completely agree with everything Beers just said. This is my favorite game for fantasy purposes of the week. This is going to be a blow-up game. There's going to be so much fantasy goodness, and everyone from both teams are in play for me in this game, except obviously the defenses, the tight ends, and the running backs for Atlanta. So Julio Jones at his price, is my number one receiver of the week. I know I said I love Antonio Brown, but at his price, he's the best price play.
6,600. You cannot. I mean, if you're in a cash game, guys, the first decision you should do this week is put Julio Jones in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reason why I believe that they're going to go off is because, what's been the main reason why Matt Ryan has been struggling?
So the offensive line is so bad, but the Tampa Bay can't pass rush.
Exactly. Both teams near the bottom of the league in terms of sacks. The Tampa 2 defense for Tampa Bay. They try and limit the big play, but again, Julio Jones is a big time player, and they just don't simply have the athletes to run that style of defense. So they rarely blitz, and which should give Matt Ryan enough opportunity. They I believe they were on a bye last week, so they should be well rested. And they really need to come out and try and get things back on track. It might be too late at this point, but regardless, I think you're going to see a huge day from Matt Ryan, huge day from Julio Jones. Don't even sleep on Roddy White. He's got the best matchup in terms of against quarterback, but there isn't really a good quarterback on Tampa Bay. And like I said, I'm not going to mess around with the running back situation unless they commit to an Anton Smith to get more carries and more touches. I'm still not even going to play him, even on DraftKings, because it seems like he's just a guy that gets that one catch and just goes for a touchdown. But so I'm not going there. I'm not going to mess around with that. There's enough value other running backs where I think you can get a relatively high floor with some upside. So it's all Matt Ryan. It's all Julio Jones. And, I said it with Carson Palmer last week, but I've got Matt Ryan listed right behind Ben Roethlisberger this week as my number 4 quarterback on the entire slate, not even including Price.
Yeah, you have to love Matt Ryan against Tampa Bay. They just can't defend the pass at all. So I'm right there with you. Ryan and Jones, lock it up. Definitely a good combo. Next game of the week, Broncos at Raiders. Beer, it is garbage time galore, I feel, for the Raiders, although they have been playing teams pretty tough. But you just know the Broncos are going to be pissed after that. The last beating they just took in New England, they're going to come out and put up a monster performance, I feel. What's your take on Carr, Jones, Holmes, and then Rivera has quietly been a target monster for the past 2 weeks. 20 targets, 100-something yards, 2 touchdowns the past 2 weeks if you need a cheap tight end this week.
Yeah, I don't see any scenario where Oakland keeps this game even remotely close. So I know they've been playing teams well. They went to Seattle and they stayed in the game. But in this game, I think they're in trouble. So to me, this is nothing more than garbage time for them. I've talked about Derek Carr before. I love the kid. I think he's got a fighting spirit. I think he goes down swinging, and I think he's going to go to the end. So garbage time alone, he can provide some value. Rivera's been decent lately. Do I trust it yet? No. He's shown flashes before. Never really lived up to it yet. I know they're calling him a key piece of this offense, but it seems like it comes in spurts. So that would be if I'm running 20 lineups, maybe I have him in 1 or 2. Jones, Holmes, you mix these guys in a little bit if you're stuck. You don't have anywhere else to go in a GPP. You're looking for garbage time points. That's what this is. I'd love to give you some hard-hitting advice here on the Raiders.
It's a shot in the dark in a GPP exactly. If you want something. A guy could get 2 touchdowns, but he could also not really do too much for you.
Right. You have to imagine Denver's going to score at will, which is going to force Oakland to score. Let's not forget, though, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to score. Teams can get shut out. Sorry, Boggs, nothing personal there, but it happens. So just because garbage time is a possibility doesn't mean it's necessarily going to turn into fantasy points. So, again, I'll take a shot at Carr. I'll mix in a few of these receivers, a little bit of Rivera, but not a whole lot here, to be honest. I think this could be 42-3, 42-10, something like that, and it could get ugly. So take your shots. Just don't go crazy with Oakland and thinking garbage time, because this could be ugly.
Boggs, let's go to the Broncos side here. Again, play all your Broncos guys if you can afford Peyton Manning, if you can afford Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders. Get them in your lineup. They're going to score a lot of points this week. The one thing I want to talk to you about is the running back situation. Monte Ball, he's back in practice. I don't really think he's going to eat too much into Ronnie Hillman's workload. What's your take on this situation?
Well, that's just something I can't, reasonably call right now at this point in time. We're gonna have to really wait, leading up and probably maybe even until kickoff to see what they do with Monty Ball. But I don't think this is Hillman's job to lose. I think this is still Monty Ball's job, despite how mediocre he really has been. So I could be wrong about that, but if Monty Ball does in fact play, that's definitely going to present a significant downgrade to Ronnie Hillman. That being said, I don't think one guy's going to come in and get the ball. I think it could be a timeshare situation, which is obviously disappointing for anything fantasy related. That on the flip side of that, I don't really care because it's all Peyton Manning. He's going to bounce back. He's going to have a monster week. Pick your hat a little which receiver is going to go off. My money's obviously on Demarius, but they all have the potential to go off except Welker, who's pretty banged up. I don't really expect him to play. So it's pretty much the Demarius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders show. Love Julius Thomas this week, but again, he's not a guy that I necessarily love on DraftKings because he doesn't get a high volume of targets. He's just a touchdown scorer.
The price is so tempting on him, but
hey, I'll tell you, he's got to score a touchdown. So if that's all you're looking for, cash games, then load him up. But
touchdowns are good for fantasy sports.
Hey, touchdowns are great, but again, it's all about market share and how many targets you're getting. How involved are you in the offense? I mean, he caught his only ball, I believe, or he caught his first catch for a touchdown last week, and that was until seemingly the third quarter. I don't know exactly when it came from, but so that's the kind of guy he is. It's not a safety net for Peyton Manning. It's just he likes to get his receivers going and get them involved because they have the bigger upside. That's the only way I can view it. But they're all in play. And hopefully Ball's out because I'd love to have one more week of Ronnie Hillman, but I think after and later through the season, we're eventually going to see Monty Ball assume that starting running back role, and which, but still have Hillman be a factor, which could be problematic. So just be careful of that. I can't make a call on it right now. It might be a game time decision type of deal, which could certainly, screw things up, but fortunately DraftKings, they do have the option for late swap, so you'll be able to switch to someone else. But regardless, I'm not really on those guys this week. And one more thing, the defense is my number one defense of the week. I agree with what Beermaker said. This one's got shutout written all over it. You look at who Denver's played this year, that defense has not had one single easy game, save for the Jets, in which they were one of the better defenses that week. This defense is among the best in the league in terms of every metric, anything you can quantify. And you're going up against arguably probably the worst team in football just all around. We saw Seattle's have a monster game. I think Denver bounces back in a big way. This one could get really ugly, and I just don't think Denver's going to let up because these guys are rivals.
All right, Boggs, I need you to inhale deeply and take a couple deep because you need some oxygen after that Broncos rant you just went on there, buddy.
It's a big game this week for them.
Beer, let's talk about the next game here. We got the Rams at the Cardinals. There's just two guys for me in this game. It's Carson Palmer. It's Andre Ellington. The receivers, it's way too hard to tell who's going to get it. He's spreading the ball around, kind of like Phillip Rivers. Whoever's open is going to get the receptions. Carson Palmer, very usable as a standalone quarterback in cash games and GPPs. And Andre Ellington has to be near the top of my list for plays in any category of game this week.
Come on, now you're not going back to the Michael Floyd well?
I'm done, man. I'm giving up on him, on Justin Hunter.
Oh.
Colin Kaepernick might reel me in, but I'm not going to do it. I don't think so.
I need to give it up too, but just can't stay away. I think you're right, though. I'm with you. I love Ellington. We know that. I play him every week. I've called for the sites to raise his prices on this format, in the six-pack. They've finally done it. So I don't know if they were listening to me or not, but I'm glad to see Ellington at least priced to where he should be. I mean, he's been underpriced to me all season, so at least that price has jumped up. Still in play, though. And that shows you that the price was underpriced when we're still looking at him at these ranges. So he's in play. love the matchup for Palmer this week. St. Louis been terrible against quarterbacks. Yes, they held Kaepernick in check, but I think Palmer's going to sit back there and pick the secondary apart. And you're right with the receivers. Fitzgerald will be the most interesting. It's tough to predict beyond that. I'll still mix in some Floyd because I just can't stop rostering Michael Floyd. But John Brown and there's this other Jerron Brown. It confused the hell out of me the other week.
There's two Jay Browns.
Brown scored. Right, and they look like twins, and they pretty much have the same number. I think they're 12 and 13. And I had John Brown on a few rosters. Jerron scores, so I'm thinking John Brown.
You got trolled hard there, buddy.
Yeah, so, yeah. Ellington, Palmer, I'm with you, and I love the defense at home. Arizona at home, a much better team. This defense, Patrick Peterson, I don't know what his deal is, but regardless, they're a big play defense. Him, Honey Badger, I could see some returns for touchdowns either in special teams or on defensive turnovers. So I love their D at home this week as well.
Boggs, let's talk about the Rams here, or actually let's not talk about them to make sure you've recovered enough to talk about the next game. There's not a single Ram I want to touch this week.
I think you should reconsider that.
What do you got for me?
I'm not going crazy wild like I did last week with my Jets prediction, but I don't know if you guys remember last year. I think the first week of the season, the Rams upset the Cardinals, and there was one particular player that really kind of led us to targeting players at this position against the Rams that had an absolutely monster day. He had 10 targets, 141 yards receiving, and 2 touchdowns.
I see where you're going here.
He's minimum priced on DraftKings. Who am I talking about?
Jared Cook.
Oh, yeah, baby. And I think if there's ever a week you use Jared Cook because he's inconsistent, it's DraftKings, and it's this week because he's minimum price. So obviously he's been kind of getting phased out. I know that they're kind of mixing in Lance Kendricks into the equation, but I just think that, Arizona's still not good against tight ends, and I really don't think they really need to be. In their division, the only tight end that really has a factor in that offense is Vernon Davis, and he's inconsistent. So I understand the mindset from the defense, but if the Rams, they've been playing tough, I think that Jared Cook is a guy to certainly keep your eye out for this week. But other than that, we can safely move on because there's nothing else I love. There's just I have Arizona and Denver as my top 2 defenses. They're tied for first this week. So, but Jared Cook has that. He has the ability. It's just whether or not he really shows up. So we'll see. But I do love him this week at minimum price. I think he's the only tight end other than Julius Thomas and Jimmy Graham that I actually love on DraftKings this week.
Next game, Giants at Seahawks here, guys. Russell Wilson, he's let people down a couple weeks in a row. They got rid of his he didn't really have any weapons, but Percy Harvin's gone. There's just not a lot of wide receiver power around him with Doug Baldwin. Can you go and use Russ Wilson against the Giants, who Andrew Luck just tore apart this week? The Giants are going from east to west. It's a very long road trip. Marshawn Lynch has to be on the top of your list for halfbacks in all formats this week. Tell me what you think of the Seahawks offense.
Going back to the Lynch, I was banging the drum last week, and some were hesitant and didn't want to do it, and I'm not believing it. He's washed up. Marshawn Lynch, again, if they're not, if people say he's leaving, they're not bringing him back next year. So why are they going to use him? Because they're going to ride him into the ground. They're not going to bring him back.
Games.
It's just like you got that old car, and I'm going to drive the hell out of this car until the damn wheels fall off. That's what they're going to do with Marshawn Lynch. That's the key to success. They win by playing defense and running the ball, making Wilson more of a game manager. Wilson's game is going to evolve, and with that, he'll become a better quarterback. But in that evolution, you're going to see some ups and downs from him. It's exactly what we're seeing right now. So tough to trust Wilson in a cash game at this point. Although tournament, we've seen his upside. I got no issues with him in a tournament. You don't have to pair him with a receiver because they don't have any damn receivers. Doug Baldwin is okay. Curse, up and down. Richardson, I love long term, but it's going to take some time before he gets there. So You don't have to pair him. You can do a naked Russell, as we like to say.
Naked Russell.
But Lynch, I'll be all over again this week. I think he's in for another big week. Giants run D, not very good. One quick note, the receivers maybe get a bump with Prince Omakamura, however the hell you say his name. He's looking like he's out for the season from what I can see. So maybe you do give a little boost to Baldwin, Curse. But, again, I'm not impressed with these receivers. I'll mix them in tournaments, but I don't have to tag them with Wilson is the key point there. I think you can go with him alone. But Lynch, preferred play here. And I do love the defense against turnover machine Eli Manning at home. I think could be a tough day for the Giants offense outside of Larry Donnell.
Real quick note, I just brought up Doug Baldwin's player page on DraftKings. It looks like he didn't practice today. So if you're using him on a Thursday slate game, guys, you're going to want to check practice on Thursday, see if he practices. If he doesn't, keep an eye out for later in the week. So it looks like he might have tweaked something in practice or something like that today. Let's go to the other side of this ball here, Boggs. The Giants in Seattle, traveling from East Coast to West Coast with no run game. Can you use any of these guys and feel good about it? In cash, I don't think so. In a GPP, maybe you take a shot on ODB. But other than that, I see nothing I want on this Giants offense.
Yep, let's move on. I'm serious. I found even a play on the Rams that I like this week, but there's nothing I like from the Giants' perspective.
Let me pull up the Seahawks. The Seahawks versus tight end. They're giving up the fourth most fantasy points to tight ends this year. Larry Donnell, maybe, if you're stretching it this week, guys. But that's
no, I'm going to even say no on that. For $1,000 more, you can have Julius Thomas, and if in a GPP, I think, again, Jared Cook is a better option.
It's so easy to get salary. You don't have to stretch for Donnell.
Look, Seattle, they still need one of these statement games to get back on track, and I was hoping it was last week. It looked like it was. Every indication it was, at least at halftime. But then they kind of just, for whatever reason, just kind of let the Raiders kind of seep back in. They think they gave up a punt block for a touchdown. Just ridiculous. This is the week that they really need to make a statement game, and I don't see it from Larry Donnell. I could be wrong, sure, but I think I would play, if they were the same price, here's this, and this, you may think I'm crazy. If they were the same price, I'd play Jared Cook over Larry Donnell this week.
How many beers have you been drinking today, Box? You must have started early.
That's irrelevant. That's irrelevant. But I'm telling you, look, it's the receiving core for the Giants. Nothing to write home about. Richard Sherman had a big pick last week. He's back on track. I mean, yeah, sure, if there's one guy they're going to target, but I just think the pass rush is going to be too much for the Giants' weak offensive line. And it's going to be a long, long day for the Giants. So that's all I'm saying.
Hold on. I just wrote home about Odell Beckham Jr., so might have to add him to my list there, boys. I like what I see there. Tough matchup this week, but I do like him long term.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Let's get to the game I know Beermakersfan's been waiting the whole night to talk about. He's been dying to talk about the Bears going into Lambeau to play his Packers. You have to love Aaron Rodgers as my number one quarterback. Jordy Nelson is priced down around the industry. It's very hard for me to find a better wide receiver this week. You have to love all these Packers this week.
Oh, yeah. Play them all. Honestly, I think this is another game that you're going to want to target on both sides. I think there's plays all over the board. So Rodgers in Week 4 against the Bears, 302 yards, 4 touchdowns, almost 32 DraftKings points. And that was at Chicago. So this one's at home. I know there's talk of his injuries. Gave him an extra week to heal up with the bye week. So the bye week couldn't have come at a better time for his health. So 2 weeks to get over that. He says he's healthy. I believe him. I think he's a top, to me, he's the top quarterback of the week. If you want to argue Peyton Manning, okay, I can go there with you, but I think they're both phenomenal plays. A wide receiver, Jordy Nelson, obviously is his top target. He's in play. Cobb's in play. Devontae Adams, a great play as well if you need some salary relief. He's a guy you can look to. Playing about 90-95% of the snaps. I forget the exact number last week, but I don't think you have to worry anymore about Boykin stealing away looks from Adams. I think he's solidified himself as a number 3 receiver there. So a cheap salary across the industry, and on DraftKings, I love him this week. Even Richard Rodgers, they're saying they want to get the tight end more involved. Historically, the tight end's been a big part of the Green Bay offense, and I think you're going to see more of that. I think they were hoping it could be one of the other guys in Bostic, Corliss, but I like what I've seen from Rodgers when he gets looks. Looks very athletic, good hands, so I think you're going to see him get more involved. Nobody's going to have Richard Rodgers in a game with an over-under of 50. I'm willing to take a shot on any Green Bay receiver, as well as Eddie Lacy. I think he's in for a big game. Chicago's run D has improved, but he's shown he can have a big game against the Bears in the past. All the Packers are in play, and almost all the Bears are in play, and I'm sure Boggs is going to hit on that next.
Yeah, Matt Forte is pretty much my lock of the week to be one of the, a top 5 fantasy scorer this week for, in a skill position. If you can afford him, he's super expensive on DraftKings given the prices of some other guys. He's $10,000. Very tough to get him into a lineup this week, I feel, which makes him a great GPP play at the Millionaire Maker because not too many people are going to be paying that high price for him. He's easily my number 1 halfback of the week, my lock of the week. The only other question I have for you, Beer or Boggs, who else can you trust? Martellus Bennett had a pretty good game against the Packers the first time out. He's been pretty consistent throughout the year, but Marshall, Jeffrey, really tough to tell. One or two of these guys is not going to have a good game. Cutler, I still like. It looks like they were falling apart. The bye week came at a great time for the Bears. I expect them to put up some points against the Packers, but I'm liking the Packers to win this game for sure.
I'm not liking the Bears to put up very many points. This is going to be the same exact game that we saw Chicago show up for in New England. Sure, they can put up points in garbage time, but bottom line is the only guy you can trust is Matt Forte. As a running back, this guy has not had less than 5 receptions in any game he's played in this season. He's gotten up to 12 in a few games here this year. I think he's well worth that $10,000 price tag, and I wish he was even more expensive because we laid out quite a few good value plays that we like this week. And anything to make it a little bit tougher to get Forte in your lineup, I'm all in favor of. But I'm going to have a ton of exposure to him. He's the only guy I like in this game, to be honest, especially since Green Bay's it appears like they're getting Sam Shields back. I believe if Beermakersfan, if he can confirm that. But he's back. Green Bay's been tough against the pass all season long. They're middle of the pack against tight ends, so I'm not necessarily on Martellus Bennett. But I'm not going to dick around with these receivers. I'm not going to mess around with Jay Cutler. I just don't see any way Chicago can come in here and kind of steal a game. Green Bay has been playing pretty well, aside from that last game before heading to the bye. But they're still productive from all aspects. And really quickly, bottom line is it's only Forte for me. But on Richard Rodgers, is he going to be the guy this week? Because that's another interesting scenario. I know back in the day when Jermichael Finley was part of the offense, he used to torch Chicago because of Lovie Smith and that Tampa 2. They kind of run a similar style defense. Is he going to be that guy this week, in your opinion, Beers?
For everything I'm reading, he's supposedly going to get most of the work there. So, again, is it coach speak? Is it, beat writer speak? Hard to trust all that, but from the sources that I've seen, the names that I trust, it looks like he is going to be the man there. So one quick point, I'm going to disagree with you on the receivers. These corners are good. They have a hard time with the big athletic receivers. So we've seen in the past Marshall have some big games, Jeffrey have some big games, but that was when Cutler was on point. And right now Cutler not playing real good football. So I do like the receivers. And I take a shot on Cutler in a tournament just because I think this game is going to have a lot of points, and I do think the Bears can put up some points. Those corners may struggle with these receivers if Cutler can high point the ball and find them in the end zone. I think there could be some production there. Marshall's price on DraftKings is very cheap, so I would willingly take a tournament shot on them. I agree with you, Forte. Probably the only cash game play I'm looking at. I do like Bennett a little bit more than you. And again, these receivers, I think, is worth a shot in a tournament. So, going to be a fun game. I think Green Bay wins going away, but I think Chicago's going to do a little bit more than people think.
Fair enough.
Beer, let's go to the final game of the week, Monday night. Carolina at the Eagles. The Eagles, they're going to be getting back the #1 rated guard by Pro Football Focus for the past 2 seasons. Going to be back into their lineup this week. That's going to help out Mark Sanchez, and the guy that's really going to help, LaShawn McCoy. We keep saying every week, McCoy's going to have a breakout week. He's going to have a breakout week. He keeps getting the touches, and with Sanchez looked pretty good, but I think they might have to lean on McCoy a little bit more here. But I think Sanchez, for the cheap price around the industry, McCoy, Macklin, those 3 are all in play for cash games for me. Jordan Matthews also getting a much higher percentage of the snaps than he was, say, 3 or 4 weeks ago. He's starting to get on my radar, too. You have to love the Eagles against this bad Carolina defense.
Yeah, and you said it right there. This is a bad D against the run, against the pass. So before we get into the great Mark Sanchez debate, we'll start with McCoy. I love McCoy this week. Like you mentioned, the offensive line's getting healthy. It's a top 3 offensive line according to Pro Football Focus last year. And this year when they're all together, I think they're missing one more piece. But for the most part, they're looking back together. So McCoy's gotten the touches, 20 carries in each of the last 4 weeks. He just hasn't gotten the end zone. Only has 1 touchdown on the year. Obviously, that's an anomaly to me, and I think those numbers are going to even out. It's no different than when a guy starts off with 9 touchdowns, he's going to come back down to earth. A guy like McCoy, 1 touchdown, he's going to come back to the middle as well. So that big game is coming. And yes, we say it every week, but he is getting the touches, he's getting the yards, he's just lacking the touchdowns. This is a tremendous matchup for him. Great price on DraftKings, great price on FanDuel. I love McCoy this week being almost all my lineups. Sanchez, I know there's people on both sides of this fence. It's Mark Sanchez. He's not good. The Jets Sanchez.
The system is so good. The system for Chip Kelly is so good. It doesn't really even matter to me who the quarterback is.
Exactly. It reminds me of the Denver running back situation. Now, Terrell Davis was a fantastic football player, head and shoulders above the rest of those guys. But you plug names in there like Landis Gary, Mike Anderson, all the young people, like, who the hell are you talking about? But to me, it's a system play. And Chip Kelly knows Mark Sanchez. They both come from the Pac-10, West Coast quarterback. He's going to play the system role extremely well, so I don't think it bumps Macklin down at all, and I think it bumps Matthews up. These guys practice with the second team for a lot of preseason, all summer long, so keep that in the back of your head that those two have a good connection, and you saw it. Matthews is becoming a big part of the offense. He was targeted a lot in that last game as well with Sanchez in there. So you don't necessarily have to pair Macklin with all your Sanchez teams if you're looking to roster him. Pair some with Matthews as well. But love Philadelphia this week, Carolina. Not a good D at all.
Let's go to the Panthers here to close this out, Boggs. Cam Newton, he's had some pretty bad weeks the past couple of weeks in a row, but this Philadelphia Eagles defense, they really give up a lot of fantasy points all around. Cam Newton, Benjamin, if he can ever hold on to a ball, I think he's going to make a great receiver in this league. He has tremendous GPP upside for me, along with Greg Olsen, who's also had a bad week, or a bad past couple of weeks due to the Carolina Panthers struggles. Are you on board with kind of them getting a revival this week in Philadelphia?
I don't know, to be honest with you. It's so tough because you see, Cam have these big games come out of nowhere, and he's going to have the ball, assuming that Philadelphia is going to have their way with this Carolina defense, as we all predict. So just the amount of possessions that Carolina factors to have in this game, I think Cam Newton is certainly in play. I wouldn't go so far as to say that he's a cash game option, but
he's 6,600. So you have Matt Ryan at 6,300. I think is going to be a better cash game play. But above him, you have Kyle Orton, Eli Manning, Joe Flacco, Russell Wilson, Matt Stafford. All those guys are priced higher. I think I'd rather use Cam Newton, but I think I'd rather use Matt Ryan over Cam Newton.
Well, and then the one thing that I think is kind of working towards Cam's advantage is that he's starting to run the ball again. He was dealing with I think it was an ankle and a rib injury early on in the season, and that's when you kind of saw this like under 10, under 20 yards rushing. But in recent weeks, especially back to week 6, he had 100 yards rushing, but he's had 41, 20, 21, 24 yards against Seattle, which is a tough defense, and 43 against New Orleans, which is a very porous defense, similar to the Eagles. So there's definitely upside there. Again, I just can't trust the guy in my cash games. And, really, you kind of laid it out perfectly. Cam, in addition to Kelvin Benjamin, are, one or two Kelvin Benjamin end zone drops from having better games. So,
exactly.
So I think they're both in play. Again, you can't trust the guy, Kelvin, even at his, ridiculously low price in cash games, just because as a player, he's just very raw, and his talents aren't refined yet. So I do like him, especially at that price this week. But again, it's too risky for me in your tournaments because who knows? I mean, this Carolina team, it's almost time to pack it in. But the one area I'm kind of struggling with is, do you think that with Philadelphia being effective against tight ends and Kelvin Benjamin struggling a bit, and Kerry Williams not being necessarily a terrible cornerback, that D'Angelo Williams gets more involved this week, perhaps like on screen passes, like design screen passes?
There is a 0% chance I'll be rostering any Carolina running back unless they're all injured and it's just one of them instead of 5 or 6 of them.
Okay, yeah, I mean, one of those guys I think has the ability for a big breakout play, but I don't know who it's going to be, especially, Jonathan Stewart, he was back last week. But yeah, it's tough. It's just really tough all around for Carolina, but there is upside there. So, I guess to sum it up, I think Cam and Benjamin are the two guys you target. But outside of that, it's just really, really, really hard to find anything that you can, really draw upon in this game.
All right, guys, that's going to pretty much do it for this show tonight for Week 10, the NFL First Look. If you're used to listening to me on Wednesday nights next week, Emac's going to be filling in for me. I'm going to be moving to the Thursday show for 1 week. Beer and Boggs will still be here on Wednesday. Beer, anything you want to say to all these guys out here who are going to be chasing this $1 million prize on DraftKings this week?
No, best of luck to everybody out there in all the big tournaments, all the qualifiers. Any questions up now until the weekend? All 3 of us on Twitter, our handles are right there. So ask questions. That's how you get better at this game. If you're new, if you've been playing for years, I've been playing this game pretty much longer than anybody. I still ask questions every day, so don't be afraid to learn. Good luck this weekend, guys.
Boggs, any last words before you crack open maybe a 24-pack and finish your night off in a very nice way?
Hey, I got the Miller Lite. That's what it's all about. But, yeah, good luck this weekend, Grinders. We'll miss you next week, Britt, but glad that the move isn't permanent.
It's not me. It's not me. There was Emac had a scheduling conflict, so I was nice enough to switch for him.
Well, it's not you yet. If Emac, if we start maybe molding with him, you could be 86 from this little crew of ours.
Man,
I'm only kidding. We have great chemistry. Love working with you. Love working with both of you. But yeah, great. Good luck this weekend, Grinders.
All right, guys, get in that DraftKings Millionaire Maker this week, $40 buy-in. I'm guessing there is going to be some overlay in that again this week. So if you like value and you like a chance to win $1 million, make sure to check that out this week. For my co-host, Chris Beermakersfan Prince, and Paul Boggslite Arrington, guys, I'm BritDevine, and we out ya!